Hello, I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is MotivationU the Podcast. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak, and we come to you every week live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point inside the podcast room. But today, as you can see, we're not there. Our producer and there's just some things that went on with some of the illnesses, and we're doing it live from right here in the MotivationU offices, which is here in Valdosta, Georgia. I'm looking out at a beautiful sunny day out through this window right here, which you can kind of see the reflection in my whiteboard behind me. But I have an incredible vista. I live on a golf course called Stone Creek in Valdosta, and the 12th hole is where we live. So I get to watch the golfers go by, and even though it was cold this morning, they were out there quite early, and it amazes me how some things like that attract people to a certain event, even in the cold. They're all bundled up, and I can't think what their hands had to be freezing in out there playing. But sun's come up, beautiful, bright blue sky, and they're ready to go. So today we're going to talk about Dale Carnegie. And it's a timely event because in 18 days, we have another class starting in Gainesville, which will be at Hotel Indigo, Tuesday evening, 6 to 9:30. You can sign up at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. You can go there and sign up. We also have a class beginning in Jacksonville that night, which will be the same evening, Tuesday the 25th. You can sign up there also at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. Have a lot of great people that are going to be in the program, people that have invested their time and their efforts to improve themselves. But what is the Dale Carnegie class? And that is something I thought we would share and talk about today. Now, Dale Carnegie's company started in 1912. Mr. Carnegie felt that if he could get business people, at that time businessmen, if he could get them on their feet and talking about their companies and interacting with other people, that it would improve their success rate in business. And the methodology changed over the years and developed. And in 1935, he published a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you have not read that book, I share with you, please pick it up and read that book, and read it the way Mr. Carnegie describes in his introduction. And that is to read it through once and then go back and read it through and take notes the second time you go through. And it's an incredible book from the standpoint that it's just a conversation. It's storytelling. It's so easy to read. I like listening to it. I bought it on Audible and listen to it while I'm driving, or just sometimes when I want to sit out in the yard, put the headphones on and listen to the book and just pick up some of the little nuances. But the Dale Carnegie class has evolved over the years. Now we have over 10 million people that have graduated from that program. It's offered in like more than 80 countries, more than 35 languages. So there's opportunities out there for us to succeed. And what the class is, it's really an interactive program where you're learning from the principles that we share with you in our methodology, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But also, the program is in a way that you get to interact with other people and understand that in your business world, you may think that you're the only one with those challenges, but you find out that many other industries and businesses and people have similar challenges. So there are 5 drivers that Mr. Carnegie identified that would help you be more successful in your world. And those are the 5 drivers that we call the 5 drivers of success. And what they do is each one of them has to do with who you are. So the 5 drivers are number 1 is your self-confidence, helping you build your self-confidence. And I'll touch on that in a couple of minutes here, but how can you build more confidence in things you do so that you feel better about yourself? The second one are people skills. And one of the things that we know is that if you're going to be successful in life, it's your interaction with other people. And we do touch a lot on that. The third being communication. How do we communicate? How do we listen? What is the tone of our voice? What is it that we're trying to accomplish in our communications? Are we afraid to say things? How can we develop those skills? The fourth driver is leadership. How do we get involved in leadership? What is leadership? What does it really mean? Do you have to be a CEO to be a leader? What are the different areas of leadership? How can we lead from the ground up? And then the last one is managing our stress at work and in life. I mean, managing stress over the last 2 years has probably been one of the things that people ask me about the most. Geez, I'm always stressed. I'm always on edge. How can I get through that? There's many ways to do it, but we really touch on from Mr. Carnegie's book of how to stop worrying and start living. Think about that. How to stop worrying and start living, and all the things that we worry about, the fears that we have. So let's tackle some of these. First of all, the methodology that we use. The methodology that we use is what we call coaching in the moment. If we see as an instructor, and let me also share with you, our instructors are not just given a book and said, hey, you got a class starting Tuesday night, go to it, get into it. Our methodology is based upon how Mr. Carnegie taught people. And we do the same thing. As instructors, we've got to be graduates of the course. Then we have got to be graduate assistants. And then we go through hours and hours of training of how to just facilitate a meeting with a group of people. How do you facilitate that meeting? How do you take 15, 20, 10, 18, 25 people in a room and manage that whole process? So we go through that before we're even given that opportunity to be an instructor. And then we learn more about the class that we're teaching. If it's the Dale Carnegie course, which we're talking about here, if it's a leadership program that we have, if it's our high impact presentations, if it's a sales program, whatever, customer service, whatever we're doing, there's a litany of modules that you could approach and go through. We must learn how to present that material to an audience. So I'm not saying that other companies or organizations just give people a book and say, go do it. What I'm saying is that you can be assured that your instructor, whoever it may be, like it'll be me in Gainesville, one of my cohorts, Tim Shoptaw, is teaching the class in Jacksonville. We have all gone through the same methodology of learning to be an instructor. So the consistency is there. We've had many people that, let's say, it's an 8-week or 9-week long class, because we're going to add an orientation to our programs now, so that you have a night to get orientated with other individuals. But we've had many individuals that maybe are taking the class, let's say in Gainesville, and then they have to travel for work for a week. And then I can help them find a class in the city that they're traveling to. And if it's the same night, they can make that class up there because it's that seamless, consistent throughout it. So we based our methodology on that, on those coaching principles, and also on Mr. Carnegie's principles. In the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, there are 30 human relations principles. We go through every single one of those principles in the 8 weeks that we're dealing with. And you will learn each and every one of those principles and how they can be applied in your life. And that's probably the reason that I hear from people more often, or all of us as instructors hear from people, this quote that people say to us all the time: it changed my life. It changed my life. So that's one of those things that you want to do. It's the principles that change your life. I'm just the conduit. I'm just a connection from the principles to you and helping you learn how to do that. So that is the methodology that we use. We set goals. We anticipate breakthroughs. We learn how to develop a vision for where we want to be, and then we accomplish that vision. We really learn how to think in that present term so that we can make it to where we want to be. So let's tackle some of the things. First of all, when we start looking at confidence, one of the visuals that I like to use is an iceberg. Think of an iceberg floating out in the ocean. If you think of the Titanic, one of the most famous things that ever happened, in our world is when the huge ship, the Titanic, hit the iceberg and sank. Well, it wasn't the tip. It wasn't the top of the iceberg that sank that Titanic. It was what was below the surface, which couldn't be seen. It was latent. We're like that as humans. We have latent abilities that sit below the surface that we hardly ever tap into. Psychologists say we use about 10% of our talents. And if you can find somebody to help you tap into that 90% that is sitting below the surface and just bring a little bit of that to the top, you'll be able to really start developing some more skills in your world. So, that is how we start building that confidence. In week one, what we do in week one is we start tapping into that from the standpoint of learning how to develop breakthroughs, how to introduce ourselves, how to get our name out to somebody. We learn methods of how to do that, like we refer to as pause, park, punch. When you give your name to somebody, how do you present that to them? That's a huge part of building your confidence. When you meet somebody for the first time, it's awkward. It's awkward for everybody, no matter if you're a very extroverted person or if you're a very introverted person. It's awkward. And how do we get that through to them? So that's a big part of it, because fear holds us back. And if we can build that confidence, then we really start to develop a different way of doing things. So in week one, our big part is really getting into conversations, remembering people's names. We all have that challenge. I have that challenge. I have to practice it all the time. So in week one, the first thing you're going to do is learn how to present yourself. And then you're going to learn a method of how to have a conversation with somebody. One of the things that we will teach you is that the mind works in pictures. So when I say to you red apple, you don't see REDAPPLE. You see a red, juicy apple. So when we communicate with people it's important that we understand that, because they're hearing what we're saying in pictures. So the more we can describe that picture and help them, the better it'll be for you. So we're not going to get into teaching the class today. I'm just going over some of the things that we will be doing in that classroom. So week 1, conversation, how to have one, how to present our name, how do those two things go together, and how do we remember people's names? Big part of that. It has to do with those drawing of pictures. Now, you're not going to be drawing pictures, but you're going to be mentally conversing with people and describing that scenario in week 1. Also, we'll be doing some goal setting in week 1. We'll learn how to set a vision for ourselves in week 1, so that when we're looking 3 to 6 months down the road, can we really paint that picture and see where we're going to be? And how do we do that in a way that is different than what other people do it? How can we see that? How we can create the vision? So week 1 is a great start, because you start interacting with other people and learning little, I don't like to use the word tricks, but they're little methods of how to remember how to have a conversation. You start with a person's name, and then, where are they from and where do they work, and the things that you want to learn. And you learn to become totally, genuinely interested in that other person and focusing on them. So often, I will meet somebody, and I'm guilty of it too. I will share with you, I'm guilty of this too, where I meet somebody and then immediately I'm looking to the next person that I need to meet, and that is such a huge part of it, is to focus on that individual and learning how to ask questions that you're not grilling the person, you're having a conversation. We're not taught that as youngsters, or many of us aren't. Some of us may have had parents that taught us that, but my parents were more introverted. My mother was extremely introverted. She was a great golfer, but she didn't like to go out and play golf because she didn't like the interaction with other people, because she was shy, introverted. And some of the times that her and I talked, she lived to be 93, almost 94. And some of the times that we talked before she passed, that was one of the things that bothered her. And I would tell her about what I did through Dale Carnegie, and she would say to me, Bobby, I wish I would have gone through a class like that. I mean, I could have interacted differently with other people. And my mom's whole world was around her church. And, she would go to church and she would wave and smile and say hi to people, but she never really connected with people or got to know them well. And this class helps you do that. So, and that's part of what builds our confidence, because we don't want to sit there at the end of our life and say, I wish I would have. Think about that. I mean, how many people do that, where you get to the back end of your life and you go, man, if I could have just done that. And that's why I love what I do, is because I help people. I almost said younger people. Yes, there are a lot of younger people, but I've had people over 75 in my class that just decided that now is the time that they're going to learn how to do this. Successful people, very successful people, successful in real estate, in law, in different areas, architecture, yet they finally said to themselves, no, I'm going to do something for myself. So that week 1, we spend a lot of time in that communication side of learning how to get our view off to other people. So that's week 1. Week 2, you get introduced to the principles. Now you start getting into what Mr. Carnegie's principles in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, were. And in that first set of principles, we're doing things like talking about not criticizing or complaining, or condemning. I mean, think about that for a second. Could you go through a day, one full day, without criticizing somebody else or complaining about something? It's a difficult thing. And it's not simple. It's not simple. I mean, I've gone through the last 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks tomorrow that I got sick. I got the flu real bad. I was flat on my back for much of the holidays. And I kept on thinking to myself, what, I'm going to sit here and complain about it? I mean, I read a story recently about how you perceive things and look at things. And there was a young man was in a wheelchair, and a gentleman walked up to him and said, man, it must be difficult to have to live your life in a wheelchair. And the young man looked at him and said, no, because if it wasn't for this wheelchair, I wouldn't be able to get out and get around and meet people. And I'd have to be laying flat on my back. I look forward to this wheelchair. Wow, what a difference in life, right? How we perceive it. And that's kind of what we start working on with those principles. We talk about, how important a person's name is to them, how to be a good listener, how to make the other person feel important, how to talk in terms of their interests, how to show appreciation, how to arouse in somebody else that eager want to want to do things, to be engaged in your work and in your profession, because we all fall off the wagon at that. So we do that in week 2, an incredibly fun time. We also work on our fear in week 2. How can we take stories from our life and share them with other people so that we can see those defining moments in our lives that people will find interesting? Because, I hear, well, I kind of had lived a boring life. I didn't do much, up to now. There's not a lot that I can tell. There's no really defining moment in my life. Yet through our coaching and our methodology, you find out how to tap into those things that have happened in your life, good and bad, that have really catapulted you to where you are. So that's one of those things that we really work on in week 2. So week 2 is all about the principles and building our confidence. Then we get into week 3. Week 3 is, you come back, you report about how your use of that first set of principles went. You start seeing some of the different interactions that you've had with people, and you say, wow, this stuff really works. It's really effective in my life. I'm starting to feel good about it. And then we introduce you to the next set of principles. You'll get one of these little books too, which is just a pocket size of all the principles. We call it the Golden Book. And a lot of people carry that right in their pocket all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to reach down here and grab something right here. My original Golden Book from 1991, right here. This was a book that I've carried with me for the last 30 years, because it was the book that I received at that time. And those principles are always in your mind. So we start working on those gain willing cooperations, how to avoid arguments, how to begin in a friendly way, how to throw down a challenge or dramatizing your ideas. That is in week 3, because once we build rapport with an individual, then we can start gaining their willing cooperation. Whoever it is, if it's family member, if it's your children, if it's friends, if it's cohorts at work, if it's different individuals within your business, if it's a client, how do you build that? I was talking to a young man earlier today that is a graduate of the Dale Carnegie course, and he works for a private country club in Georgia, and he manages all of the caddies. And he shares these principles with them because it's so vitally important that when you meet somebody for the very first time and you're going to spend 4 or 5 hours together with them, that there's not that awkwardness that goes on between two people. How can you How can you shrink that time so that you can communicate with those individuals? So we start that in week 3, to really gaining willing cooperation, which is, it's a lot of fun. That's the other part of the Dale Carnegie class that I enjoy it because I feed off of the students. What I really enjoy about it is that the students are having fun. There's smiles on their faces. They're interacting, they're growing. They see the growth. I mean, many people, when we get to week 3, they're going, wow, I mean, already this has impacted me in a positive way. So that Dale Carnegie class is really, something that you really, really want to tackle. So then we go on to week 4, and we learn how to energize our communications. Have you ever been involved in a meeting where the person giving the talk is just in a monotone voice, having this conversation, putting you to sleep, and they just really can't get their thought process through to you? Man, how many meetings have we been in like that? Just put you to sleep, and that's the way it is. Well, week 4, we learn how to energize our communications, how to be a little bit more emphatic in the things we say, how important enthusiasm is when we communicate with other people, how the look on our face, how our body posture can impact somebody else in a positive way. But energizing those communications are very, very important. Mr. Carnegie said that enthusiasm is that little known secret of success. And when you think about it, it's just a little bit. I think it's 212 degrees that water boils. All right, think about that. 212 degrees. At 211, it's real hot. But at 212, it boils, creating steam. And you can run a city if you have enough of it, and that's what happens to us. It's just that little change in our lives. Like if you look at race cars, it's like the Daytona 500. It's like a fraction of a second between first place and second place. And life is like that too. It's just that little bit, that little touch. And we learn how to energize those communications. We learn how to become more animated in the things we say. That happens in week 4. Also in week 4, we learn how to systematically give directions, a simpler way to communicate and be more effective. We use an acronym called the LIONS approach, which is language easily understood, illustrations, organize your thought, narrow the key points, and then summarize. And when you get that down, you really change the way you're communicating with people, especially when you have to give directions. How many times, my dad used to say to me all the time, Bobby, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, how are you going to have time to do it over again? Well, in the business world, time is money. Time is success. And if we have to repeat ourselves over and over and over again when we're giving directions, it's wasting time. And we're not sure that the person is really understanding what we're saying. And in many professions, it can be the matter between life and death. I mean, if you're building airplanes and you're giving instructions to people who are building the airplane, those instructions better be spot on, because somebody's going to get in that plane and fly, and you want to make sure that it is done correctly. Many worlds that is effective in. So in week 4, those 2 things that we do is energize our communications and then learn how to give those directions in a way that people will be able to follow and get them the first time, instead of having to repeat ourselves over and over and over again. Very, very key part. So again, You can pick up this podcast in a lot of different places. We're on 39 or 40 different platforms, whatever it is. Facebook Live, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, you can find this podcast. And you can go back and listen to some of the leadership programs that we've had and talked with Coach Spurrier, Mayor Scott James, different leaders in our communities and in the world, CEOs like Stephanie Stuckey from Stuckey's Corporation, different individuals that we've interviewed. And it all comes down to these principles. And that's vitally important. So we've gone through the first 4 weeks, and we'll tackle the next 4 weeks when we come back from our break. And we're going to just take a short break. We have a couple of commercials to play, and then we'll come back from that and we'll tackle week 5. And then I'll give you some of my favorite principles at the end. This is MotivationU the Podcast, usually coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point in the Coach's Podcast Room. Today, we're in the MotivationU office. So be right back with you.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back to MotivationU the Podcast, and my name is Bob Ganzak, and we're talking about Dale Carnegie training today. We're talking about the Dale Carnegie class and what you can expect when you sign up. You can sign up at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com and find a course, and when you click on that, you'll see 2 selections. You can take the class in Gainesville, or you can take the class in Jacksonville, depending on where you are. We'll have more classes coming up in February in Lake City and some other areas up here in Georgia. I'm hoping to put one together in Tallahassee sometime soon also. So you'll find that. What we've done so far is we've talked about the first 4 weeks, what you're going to learn in the class. week 1, 2, 3, and 4, what is going to be the process of going through that? We're not digging deep into it. We're just kind of sharing with you what you'll have on the menu when you come to class for that evening. So week 5, a lot of individuals say to me that was like a hugely effective thing in my life. Because week 5, we learn how to have those tough conversations. What are those, what are those times that we just blurt out our opinion on something and how it starts an argument? I mean, we see it all the time. So you learn a method of how not to lead with your opinion, but the ability to tell a story, the ability to share an idea or a thought and then follow with your opinion at the end of why you feel that way. What happens often is we throw out our opinion, or somebody throws out their opinion, and then we throw our opinion back at them. And then we're back and forth, 2 opinions being thrown at each other, and all of a sudden you're in an argument. I've said in many meetings, many rooms with other individuals, professionals, high professionals, where all of a sudden we're in an argument. And I'm like, how did we get to this point? And it's usually because we lead with our opinion. So in that week, you're going to learn how to tell that story that supports your opinion so that you can give facts or statistics or an analogy that will share of why you feel the way you do, which makes that a little bit more open. And what are some key words that maybe we use every single day that really inflame other people to want to fight back at you, and how to eliminate those words from your vocabulary when you're in a conversation like this. So those tough conversations are really important. Then we're also going to have our introduction to leadership. In week 5, you start tackling the leadership principles. What you've done so far is you've learned how to build rapport. We started that in week 2. And then week 3, we started learning how to gain other person's willing cooperation. And now we're learning how to really lead. In week 5, we're given a set of principles that will help us become stronger leaders, to really develop that skill to be able to take on a project. If your boss says to you, hey, Joe, would you head up this project? Many times we want to push that off to somebody else. I don't want that responsibility. Yet now you've learned how to build rapport with your team, how to get their cooperation, the ins and outs of that, and then how can I take that project and lead it? What are the things that I can do to compel people to want to let me help them and mentor them or guide them through this process? So that's in week 5 when you get introduced to that. Week 6, in week 3, you've already learned how to start learning the managing stress principles, and you set yourself a goal to manage stress. And I like to pair up some of the individuals in the class so that you have an accountability partner. And in week 6, we start talking about some of the successes that we've had in managing our stress. How do you combat that fear to be able to spend time in communication with other individuals? Week 6 is also a lot of fun. We do some what we refer to as flexibility drills. How to become more flexible, how to understand, not like Gumby, but like to understand where it's okay to stretch outside our comfort zone. It's okay to open up doors that we never wanted to open in our lives because we were afraid what was on the other side. So that's a huge part of week 6. And then we travel on to week 7. Week 7, one of my favorite sessions, week 7. Giving and accepting appreciation. We don't know how many times people try to give us sincere appreciation and we push it away. We might say something like, I'm just doing my job, or you don't have to say that, or you don't have to do that. Why? Somebody is handing you this wonderful gift of appreciation, and you want to learn how to accept that. You want to learn how to say, thank you, man, I really appreciate that, and how to give it, how to look inside somebody and see the good in them and be able to share that with them, how to identify that in somebody else. Now, you've spent 6-7 weeks with people and you've observed them over the time. You've learned more about who they are and what they're about. Now you get that opportunity to share some appreciation, some personal traits about that person that you've observed, and how to share that with them, because it's not easy. Now, I usually ask people at the end, was it harder to give it or to receive it? And more people find it harder to receive the appreciation, though many people find it hard to give that because that's never been something in their world for many reasons. One is that nobody's given them appreciation, so they don't know what it looks like or feels like. And we spend a lot of time in week 7 really learning how to give and accept appreciation. And then the second part of week 7 is we're talking about inspirational. We're going to look at and talk about inspirational leaders that have gone on in the world from the beginning of time. We're going to evaluate them. We're going to talk about their traits and the things that they did in their lives that inspired other people. And then we're going to take a look at our lives and see how the things that we've done in our life can inspire other people, and how we can help other individuals, build their own confidence. So week 7 is like my favorite. The appreciation, the inspiration is just absolutely a magical evening when you start putting those things together. It's a lot of fun too. There's a lot of emotion in that evening. I'll share some stories of past classes that just happenings that just, man, it's the reason you want to come back every single week, because I know those things are going to happen. And when you see it happen in the room, individuals sharing that sincere appreciation and inspiring stories, it might be your grandmother, your grandfather, a boss, a coach, a sister, a brother, somebody that inspired you, and the ability to tell those stories. It's just like magical. It's really, really magical to see that happen, because you've built now where people have their confidence, where people have found their voice. You've been working for 6.5 weeks to develop these skills every single day. You've got coaches, the graduate assistants in the back of the room that talk to you during the week. You're interacting with other people. You're finding your own voice. And now you get to share that with other people, your life story, and understanding that people want to hear it. People want to hear that, and there are some professions that, I've had people say to me, well, I don't want to get up there and tell my story. Why? Why not? Usually it's because they're afraid to, or they don't think their story has any value. Everybody has value. Everybody has that value. And you really start eyeballing that in week 7. So it's really cool. And then we move on to week 8. We celebrate our accomplishments. We reset our vision. Now, remember, we set a vision in week 1 of where we wanted to be in 3 to 6 months. Now, after this 8-week program, we reset that vision and we start seeing, and I see as an instructor, I see individuals totally changing their vision. They found their footing. They found that something inside of them. They tapped into that 90% that is sitting below the surface. And they brought that to the top. And now they're eager to get out there and enjoy their life and enjoy their profession and grow. And the things that they used to be fearful of, they're not fearful of anymore. They're understanding that when things are tough, they've learned how to manage their stress. They've learned how to tap into the principles that'll help them develop those skills. Plus, we share our leadership stories. We've worked on leadership now for 3 weeks, from week 5, 6, 7, and here we are in week 8. And now all of a sudden, we're able to share those stories. How have you utilized the leadership principles? What effect has it had on your life? And how has it affected other people? And the joy that is on people's faces when they stand up there in week 8 and they talk about the things that they've accomplished in the last 8 weeks. It's just phenomenal to see that and that change in people. And it's permanent change. We call this an application program. You must apply it. It's like sunscreen. If you got a bottle of sunscreen and all you do is carry it in your pocket and you go to the beach and you don't put it on, you're going to burn. The Dale Carnegie life is that way also. If you don't apply it, it'll never work. But when you do apply it, it does wonderful, wonderful things. And once you start applying it, all of a sudden you get into these habits of noticing things and then developing that. So we do that in week 8, and we share that leadership journey. Maybe a project that you were working on that you really accomplished because of the things you learned in the class. So that's the 8 weeks. It's a lot of fun. You learn a lot of different other nuances, how to give awards, how to recognize people for their success, and different things. That we have pen awards. You can win a pen, books, different things. We have a lot of sharing ideas, interacting with other people. It's a ton of fun. But I wanted to share with you in the last 10, 11 minutes here, just some of the principles that I've found effective in my life. The principles that I don't always practice. I'm going to, principle number 12 is, when you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. And I have unfortunately had to do that a lot in my life because I've been wrong a lot. Yet, I also understand that I can improve. Whatever happened yesterday, I can't do anything about, but I can do something about today, which will lead to a better tomorrow. So some of those principles that I really try to practice is: don't criticize, can never complain. The 3 C's, as we friendly and lovingly talk about them, the 3 C's. If you can eliminate the 3 C's from your life, you've started something incredible. Even if it's just, you start complaining about something and you stop and you go, whoa, 3 C's, I can't do that. I've got to stay away from that. To become genuinely interested in other people. Right from week 1, when you learn that conversation link of how to connect with somebody, all of a sudden you become genuinely interested in them. And when you do that, I mean, think about it, how you feel when somebody becomes genuinely interested in your life. They don't want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about you. And they want to ask what's going on in your world. How does that make you feel? That makes you feel great. Great. So why don't we do that with other people? So that's a big part. Smile. A big part of it is smile. A smile is one of those things that is universal. It can calm a meeting. Somebody walks into a room for a meeting, frown on their face, their shoulders slunched over. All of a sudden you're going like, whoa, what's going on with that person? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with Bob today? But if Bob walks in with a smile on his face, no matter what's going on in the world, put the smile on your face and be part of this team. It just changes the atmosphere. And then somebody's name. Brothers, sisters, co-workers, we get so used to saying, hey man, how you doing? Hey bud, what's happening? Hey dude, thumbs up. Use the person's name. Mr. Carnegie said that a person's name is to that individual the sweetest sound in any language. Utilize a person's name. It shows respect to them, that you really care about them. And then be a good listener. When somebody is talking, listen. Don't be on your phone. Don't sit there with your phone and, thumbing through things or looking at. Focus on them. Listen to them. Encourage them to talk about themselves. Help them develop the skills that somebody else has helped you develop. So from the first 9 principles, those are the ones that jump out at me. Next set of principles, that gaining will and cooperation. Avoid the argument. There's no reason to sit there and yell and scream and shout back and forth. Avoid the argument. Begin in a friendly way. Big part. You walk in, even if you're like going to Home Depot and you have to return something, you know that there might be some tension there. You're returning something and you look at the person's name, mention their name, say hello, how you doing today? And then explain what your situation is, but begin in a friendly way. See things from the other person's point of view. We've heard the old stories of walking in another person's moccasins and everything else. Same principle. Try to see things honestly from the other person's point of view. Why are they reacting to this situation they are? You're reacting differently. Why are they reacting in a different way? Try to see it from their point of view. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It doesn't mean you have to say that they're right or that they're wrong. Just try to see it honestly from their point of view. What is it that got them to that point where they have this feeling? And then dramatize your ideas. When you have a great idea, let other people see it. Share it with them. Draw those pictures. See that out there for them. So from those set of principles, those are the ones that really stick out to me and that I've utilized. And in the leadership principles, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Think about that. When you develop that technique of being able to ask somebody a question and guiding them by asking, instead of telling them what to do, when you develop that technique of being able to ask a question so that they can see the path that they should be on, all of a sudden, they're empowered to make a decision. They're empowered to do what you want them to do. And you're not telling them what to do all the time. Usually when we tell people, it comes with some criticism. But when you ask that question, how would you like to see, how would you like to see this project work out? Or what do you think we should do in this situation? Asking that question as a leader is really important. Another great leadership principle that I try to use all the time is make the fault seem easy to correct. You have an employee that tries something and it doesn't work. How are they feeling about it? They're depressed, they're down. Help them see that fault and show them that it's easy to correct. We can get better at this. We can do this differently. So that's a big one. And then praise the progress. When you see little things happen, the analogy we use a lot is, is when a baby's learning how to walk. They stand up and they fall down. And what do we say? Oh, you can do it. You can do it. And so it encourages them to try again. And when they fall, usually they get hurt. So there's some pain involved in it. But we make that fault seem easy to correct. Why? Because we know that eventually they're going to walk. Because if all we did was get criticized, we'd all be crawling still. But in this world, when you are able to make that fault seem easy to correct, it works with employees, friends, children, the same way. So the project didn't go the right way. Let's sit down and talk about it. It's not a time to sit there and yell and scream and stuff. Identify those little mistakes and make them seem easy to correct. So it's really, and every time they have progress, every time they see that progress, pat them on the back, give them a thumbs up, and give them a fine reputation to live up to. The way you live your life, the way you conduct yourself around the office, that gives those younger employees, those newer employees, a fine reputation to live up to. And I've always found those principles to be really, really, really effective. And when we talk about the stress principles, let's touch on some of those. One of the ones that I love there is living in day-tight compartments. What does that mean? So, if you're working on a project, you can't let other influences come in. You've got to be totally focused on that project. You're living in a day-tight compartment. What happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow, has no effect on what you're doing right this moment. You've really got to stay in that moment and take care of that. So that's living in day-tight compartments. I used to find that a lot in the radio business. I would go from one meeting to another where I would be maybe meeting with the air staff, and then I walked into the sales staff and then the front office team. And if I let some of the things that went on in the other meetings affect the department that I was walking into for another meeting, it would be chaos. But you live in those day-tight compartments, and that's a huge part of what the stress principles are, living in those day compartments. Another one is gather all the facts, then weigh all the facts, come to a decision, and then act. So when there's a problem or a challenge, get all the facts. Don't just make a knee-jerk reaction. Gather all the facts, then sit down and weigh all those facts. What are some of the things that affected this? How did we get to this point? And then once you've gathered the facts, once you've weighed all the facts, make a decision. We're going to have to go in this area. I was talking recently with a client who had to do that. They sat down, they gathered all of the information about an employee, and they weighed all of the information. They didn't just act on somebody's word. They really delved into it, and they made a decision. Yet many a times that's where it ends. Okay, you gather the facts, you weigh all the facts, and you make a decision. Then you got to act. Then you got to take action. Something's got to happen at that point. Don't just sit on it right at that time. So it's gather all the facts, weigh all the facts, come to a decision, and then act. Vitally important. And the last one that do the best you can. Every day, do the best you can. I mean, I get up, come to this desk every single day, and I've got a television over here. I've got a leather easy chair over there, and I could sit down, flip that on, watch some video, movie, or show that was recorded. Why? Do the best you can. That's not going to make me a living. That's not going to help other people. Do the very best you can every day. And really that, when you lay it on the line at the end of the day, success or failure or whatever, if you did the best you can, why worry about it? Why worry about it at that time? So those are the things that we will cover in the Dale Carnegie class. So let me go back through and share with you how you can get involved, because it's really important to invest in yourself. And especially if you have a company that's willing to invest in you, we're talking about 8-9 weeks. That's it. 3.5 hours a night. You're looking at, less than 30 hours. And if you can change your world by investing that time in yourself or that money, there was an old adage that I heard many years ago that you should take 5% of your income, yearly income, and invest it back in yourself as far as developing your skills. This is something that is going to develop your skills. This is a universal type of development. It's not a singular thing that you're going to learn. This is something you can use in all aspects of your life, your personal life, your professional life, your family life. You can utilize these principles to change your path, change your world, to feel more confident on a daily basis. So that is a real key. So go to jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com, find a course, look for the one that you want to sign up for, either January 25th in Jacksonville or January 25th in Gainesville, and then go ahead and sign up and be a part of it. Tell your boss you're going to do this. Tell your family you're going to do it. This is a commitment I'm making to myself. My nephew starts the class January 25th in Panama City Beach with another franchisee. So, encourage your friends. So that's it for today. Usually coming to you live from the Spurrier's Gridiron Grill at Celebration Point. Not today, of course. We're at the MotivationU offices here. For my good friend, Evan Miller, who's our production director and man about everything, who's got this huge smile on his face right now. I can see it, you can't. I'm Bob Ganzak, and this is MotivationU the Podcast.